First, let's bring in Nikki Haley, former UN ambassador, former South Carolina governor, and founder of Stand for America PAC. Nikki Haley, great to see you. Great to have you back on the program. What do you think about what's going on here?
I mean, Martha, these are true heroes that are taking to the streets, fighting for freedom, because, I mean, they're going to get beaten up. They're going to get put in prison. They're going to get killed. I mean, we all know what's going to happen. There's a reason the TV has been cut off. There's a reason the Internet's been cut off. And look, what is the U.S. approach? First, Biden is silent. And secondly, he chose to get back on the Human Rights Council where he sits next to Cuba. So, I mean, really, what's it saying? We have always been for human rights, always been for human rights, and we've always been for freedom. They are begging us to help them. When they wave those American flags in the street, they're doing that because they want to be like America. And we haven't seen protests like this ever. Yeah. And the idea that they're doing this, we should be standing by them.
It's a moment, and we see these moments come and go. We saw it in Tehran, but this is a moment. So the U.S. response is very crucial here. This is the mayor of Miami. This got a lot of attention when I asked him if they would consider, because he gave other examples of Kosovo. I said, do you think airstrikes should be on the table in Cuba? Watch this.
Clinton in Kosovo, intervening in a humanitarian issue with airstrikes. So there have been many opportunities in the history.
Are you suggesting airstrikes in Cuba?
What I'm suggesting is that option is one that has to be explored and cannot be just simply discarded as an option that is not on the table.
Do you think U.S. military action is something that should be on the table here?
Well, I think the action should be that the U.S. should be standing up at the United Nations, calling a hearing in the Security Council about what is happening in Cuba right now. I mean, the U.S. needs to be holding a hearing at the United Nations Human Rights Council. If they wanted to join it, why aren't you going and calling out your colleague in Cuba saying, what are you doing? We need the rest of the world to join in on this. This is exactly why we keep the embargo. This is exactly why we need other countries to join. It's that pressure that will get the Cuban dictatorship to stop.
I mean, it's amazing how close it came with Maduro, and you had 49 nations that gathered together, and he is still there. I know that you had some thoughts on this. I thought this was quite interesting. Secretary of State Blinken has invited the UN to investigate racism in the United States, sort of saying, we recognize that we have issues here at home. What do you think about that, Ambassador?
I mean, first of all, I thought that the Biden administration was extreme leftist. This is flat out insane, Martha. The idea, you've got 1 million Muslim Uyghurs that are being tortured. You've got people being bullied and beaten in the streets of Cuba. You've got Venezuelans that are arresting political protesters, all of which Biden chooses to sit with on the Human Rights Council. And the U.S. is asking the United Nations, a cesspool of political bias, to come into the United States and investigate us on human rights. We look so ridiculous in the eyes of the world right now. I can't even imagine what the world is thinking. I can't imagine what those ambassadors at the UN are thinking. I sat there and fought for the fact that we were the freest, best country in the world. And now you have our own Secretary of State calling the UN to do an investigation. I mean, you can't make this up. This isn't just insane. This is dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous.
Let me ask you before I let you go. You say that you would bring it before the UN, first of all. What other things would be on the table for you in terms of action because everyone's saying, they think that President Biden should be doing more. What else very specifically would you be doing if you were in that position?
Exactly what we did with North Korea. You go and you pull countries in, you tell them they're either with you or they're with, Cuba. That's what I would do, is get as many countries and say you're either with us or you're with Cuba. You do sanctions. You make sure the rest of the countries do sanctions. You make sure you start filing complaints. You send humanitarian aid, and you make sure that action happens. But silence is not an option. And certainly when all of these things are going on in the world, the last thing that you would think is that our own U.S. would turn around and ask that we be investigated by the United Nations that's never been kind to us. I mean, it's tone deaf, it's dangerous, it doesn't make sense.
Before I let you go, and I just have, if you could give me a quick answer, if you could, on this. So Secretary Mayorkas came out and said, do not come, Cuban refugees, don't attempt to come to the United States illegally. What did you think about that?
It's totally like they're confused. They're literally scared and they don't know what to do. They refuse to fix the border back to way the President Trump had it. Yet now they're going to tell allies in Cuba who are begging for freedom, don't come. And oh, by the way, we're not going to do anything to help you. It's awful. It's truly awful.
Nikki Haley, always great to talk to you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Good to see you.
Thanks, Martha.